Okay, travel hacks. I was doing those videos on travel, like a bunch of random topics, and I came across the thought process about travel hacks. There's a lot of travel hack videos out there, travel tips and tricks and little things like that. Um, and there's a lot that I've picked up over the last 2.5, 3 years that I haven't heard or seen anybody talking about. So I thought I'd make a video, and then I went down the rabbit hole, and the video got longer and longer and longer, and the subjects got more broad and diverse. So this is the first of a series of videos I'm going to make, should be four, about things I do to make my travel better. So I've been nomad since November 20 or since June 2022. It's April, March. Yeah, sorry, April um, 2025, and I was traveling, outside the United States in 18, 19, and 20 on a pretty regular schedule. So I picked up a lot of travel tips there, but it was really once I started, going. I started out slow traveling, then I went full nomad, and you know, there's just so many things about it that I listen to a lot of these other travel hack or travel advice people, and I'm just like, what are you thinking, right? So today I'm going to talk about planning. And when most people talk about, I got notes because this was a long process for me, and I'm kind of cramming all these videos out in a hurry because I want to get on to the fun stuff, right? These are kind of like administrative videos I just want to have there to give you the thought process, not to be the definitive do this, 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 but just to kind of, you know, try and change perspectives about some of these words and lingos used. But people talk about planning, they talk about where, when, all this. And to me, that's all superficial stuff. You think about where you're going. I'm thinking about what shoes am I wearing, because the wear and the all that stuff is that's the beginning. That's before I actually start planning, right? That's in the I want to go here, da da. That's not part of the planning phase to me. That's part of the goal setting phase. What are my goals? Why am I going? Where am I going? And why am I going there? Am I going someplace to hit a bunch of checklist items, or am I going someplace to rest and lay up by a pool? That's all the goal setting. So the planning for me is more specific. And like I said, people think about where. I think about what shoes am I wearing, because shoes are like the most important thing when you travel. What are you wearing? You know, I I don't think a lot of novice travelers or new travelers understand international travel is just walking. Uh, it's literally like 90% of it is walking 10 times more than most Americans do in their daily lives. I'm not saying all, don't go there, but I do more stairs a day here than let me put it this way. Let me keep it all on myself. I do more stairs a day here than I would do in a month back in California. And that's, you know, you just can't exist here without doing stairs. So these are the things I'm just going to kind of run through a list of things that I think are important when planning a vacation trip, preparing to go expat, nomad, that whole I'm going to get on a plane and go somewhere category, right? What shoes are you wearing? Get in shape. Again, I walk, farther than I ever dreamed I would. In fact, there's I had knee problems, and so I would go to Costco and I'd grab a buggy, and walking, all the aisles at Costco was like a challenge, significant challenge. And there are airports where you have to walk two or three times that just to get where you're going. And if you can, there's no scooters available. There's none of this, none of that. If you plan ahead, you can get a wheelchair. But just the sheer amount of walking involved in most trips is more than what I find a lot of people are accustomed to. So, are you in shape for the trip you're going? Are you, if you're going snorkeling, go swimming every day for the next month or whatever, right? Get some prep work in so you're in shape and you're able to comfortably do whatever it is you need to enjoy the place you're going. I think clothes, and I'm always talking about laundry, right? So I think about packing clothes. What clothes am I going to wear? Are they easily washable? Are they easily, this, that? Are they durable? Are they going to cover me from the sun and wind? And that whole spectrum of clothes, right? It's I'm not, I'm caring more and more about how I look, but the functionality of it. If I'm going to be on a boat trip all day, I want some long sleeves and a hood, but I don't want to be scorching or sweating in the sun, right? So a fishing shirt is great if I'm going to be doing boat trips out of El Nido because it's got the hood, it's got the long sleeves, protects me from the sun, a little bit from the wind, and it's light, it's durable, it dries fast, right? So I think about all these things and about where I'm headed. And I haven't done this in some trips and I've paid the price. Um, think about rain, bad weather. So in that clothing thing, right, and shoes specifically, what am I going to do in the bad weather? If it gets muddy, if it does this, that type of thing. I think about activities. What activities am I going to be doing? If I'm going on vacation here, or there, what are my activities? And am I going to be dressed appropriately, in shape, right? And those are all the things I want to be prepared to go. So when I'm doing them, I'm not struggling. I'm enjoying it, right? I'm relaxed. I'm enjoying it. I have the time to look. A lot of people. I ride the buses and trains a lot, and a lot of that is so I can be plastered with my window, my face to the window, and not worry about what's on the road in front of me. Um, Flex days and rest days. So when I'm in the actual nut or the actual like details of the planning, right? I mentioned in the little post-it whiteboard video that um, I'll plan a day a lot of times before and after I depart if I'm going on a specific vacation just to rest, relax. So I'll go get a hotel near the airport and I'll stay there. Even if I live near the airport, I will do that because that just kind of preps me, gets me a full day of sleep or a full like rested sleep, and then I'm starting on a full tank of everything. I'm happy, I'm full, I'm rested, right? Everything starts on a full tank. And when I get back, I want to plan the same. So I go back to whatever I was doing before with a full tank. But it also has to do with memories. The more exhausted you are, the more worn out you are, the less of the memories get written into that heart or into that long term memory storage in your brain. Is the way I understand science. I may be totally wrong, but this is my opinion. This is my crazy thoughts, right? But those rest days throughout my trip are very important as well. So I think about alternatives, right? If something goes sideways, what are my alternatives? How am I going to pivot? I usually don't put too much time into this, but just think about it like if there was a situation where I didn't pivot. I thought very hard about pivoting. In fact, I was going to Croatia. I'm looking at the weather every day, and it's forecasting this giant storm. And I finally asked a few locals, and the locals are like, "No, just ignore that. That storm's not going to hit." And I'm like, "Are you sure?" And they're like, "Yeah, it comes every time." Because I had time to pivot. I had a flexible ticket. I could have gone someplace else. I didn't want to be flying into the middle of a hurricane or typhoon, which I've done. It's not all that fun. Rain gear kind of goes back to activities and things. So a lot of times, I was always let me get a raincoat, let me get a poncho, let me do this, let me do that, and now I don't even know where it's at. Somewhere around here, I've got an umbrella, and that's really the answer for me because experience has taught me that an umbrella is the easiest way to go. I'm usually not out trying to be out in the rain for all day working. If it's raining, usually I'll find alternative activities because I thought about it in advance. And you know the umbrella seems to be the easiest in and out. They I've only had a couple flights get really finicky with those in a carry-on. I usually check those anyway. But if you're gonna buy an umbrella, the smallest, most durable, strong, expensive is the way to go. Or just have an extra $20 in your pocket, and when you get where you're going, if you need an umbrella, buy one and leave it there. Easy answer. Uh, Rest stops on the way home. So if I'm traveling a long distance and it's say I keep going back to this example, but say California or America to the Philippines. I mentioned I like the long layovers on the way there, Korea. So on the way back, I may look at doing another weekend stopover. So instead of going straight home, I may go to Thailand for a weekend because flights are cheaper out of Bangkok, right? Or I may hit another place just to spend 2 or 3 days there. Spending one night is never, I mean, if you need to for a price and logistical reasons, do it. But it's never really a great option to spend one night because you don't really get to do and see much, right? You're in, you get to the hotel, you drop your stuff, maybe a few 6, 8 hours at the most, right? And then you're up and out the next day. You're constantly like focused on timelines. So minimum two, ideally 3 nights, and especially if you're going from someplace like America to the Philippines or America to, Europe, it's easy to hit a second city and then fly back. And usually, not always, but usually you can work better flight prices that way if you don't book the round trip. Um, and then the last point, which I'll get into this in more detail in one of the next videos, but in my planning phase, at what point do I pull the plug? So, a lot of tickets and a lot of bookings, you can get free refunds up to a specific date. You can pay to get refunds up to the day before. Do I want to pay for those? Excuse me. Or do I want to just trust that I'm going to go and pivot? But all the way through, I want to have an out. I want to plan an out. I want to have an exit. I want to have that thought process. Okay, I can pull the plug here. I can pull the plug there. Especially if I'm going someplace I haven't done a little sneak and peek to. A lot of times I'll do a little sneak and peek to a country or a city before I go spend a long period of time there, or I'll talk to people who've been there. But if I'm going someplace where I don't know anybody personally who's been there, and I haven't talked to anybody, and it's just random. I always want to have a way to say, you know what, this isn't working for me. I need to go, and how do I do that? So having that line predetermined, makes it very simple for me. If I know, okay, I'm gonna put up with this, okay, no more, I'm out, right? And having that walk away point, whatever it is, whether it's financial, whether it's weather, whether it's, you know, food or illness or whatever, just having, as I'm going through the planning process, just having, you know, a point where I say, okay, enough is enough, bounce and move on. So that's my thoughts about planning. Again, going back to the shoes, I laugh about this because if you're going to plan a trip, I think the most important thing is get your shoes wired, months before you go. You want to have the shoes you're going to wear all day, every day, because it's not like home, right? Where you can just go get a different pair of shoes. And sometimes shopping for shoes isn't as easy as it sounds unless you're under a 10 men's US. Under 10 men's US, you can usually find shoes pretty easily, but they're not going to be as comfortable, or, there's going to be this or that. You may find the perfect shoe, right? But my experience has been it's a struggle to find a shoe I like just out and about. So that's what started this whole thing about travel hacks with shoes. So the next 3 videos, I'm going to cover expectations, food, fasting, and sleep, and then time. So there should be 4 videos. This is number 1. Have a great day. See you on the road.